It's kind of like the day this florist goes to the barber to get a haircut. And when the florist finishes getting his haircut, says to the barber, "How much do I owe you?" And the barber says, "You don't owe me anything today. I'm doing community service." And the florist goes, "Wow, thank you." The next day when the barber came to open his shop, found a dozen roses laying up against his front door along with a note from the florist that said, "Thank you." Later that day, a policeman came in and the barber gave him a haircut. When it finished, the policeman said, "How much do I owe you?" He says, "You don't owe me anything today. It's community service week." The policeman said, "Thank you." When the barber came to work the next day, there at his door was a thank you card and a box full of a dozen donuts. Later that day, a member of parliament came in. You all know where this is going?
Yeah.
When the barber finished the haircut, a member of parliament said, "How much do I owe you?" "You don't owe me anything. Doing community service this week." The next day, when the barber came to work, there was standing in line 12 members of parliament. And that, my friends, is as easily and clearly as I can demonstrate the fundamental difference between citizens who operate from a spiritual perception and our politicians who operate from a human sense of egotistic drive. So as we approach this opportunity in life, how does that play out here in our city? How is our perceptions being viewed around the bridge? How is our perceptions being viewed and honored around what to do with the HST? So how do we see those things? If we're all interconnected grains of sand, with no grain being more equal or greater than another, how that really is handled is through one of the most simplest but wonderful parables. It's called the parable of Brother Leo. A legend tells of a French monastery known throughout Europe for the extraordinary leadership of a man known only as Brother Leo. Several monks began a pilgrimage to visit Brother Leo to learn from him. And almost immediately they begin to bicker about who should do various chores along their journey. On the third day of their pilgrimage, they met another monk that was also going to the monastery, and he joined them in their journey. This monk never complained or shirked a duty. Whenever the others would fight over a chore, he would gracefully volunteer and do it himself. By the last day, the others were following his example, and from then on, they worked together smoothly. When they reached the monastery and asked to see Brother Leo, the man who greeted them at the door just simply burst out laughing. He says, "But our brother is among you." And he pointed to the fellow who had joined them at the beginning of their pilgrimage. Today, many people seek leadership positions, not so much for what they can do for others, but for what the position can do for them: status, connections, perks, advantages. They do service as an investment, a way to build an impressive resume. The parable about Brother Leo teaches another model of leadership, where leaders are preoccupied with serving rather than being followed, with giving rather than getting, and doing rather than demanding. Leadership is based on example, not command. This is called servant leadership. Can you imagine how much better things would be if more politicians, educators, and business executives saw themselves as servant leaders? Wow. As servant leaders. As servant leaders. When we develop a perception of any given situation, it's easy to believe that, that's how it's seen. When I was in the hospital after I had my heart attack, my wife, Crystal, called my aunt and uncle in Texas. They live in a farm in the northeast corner, a panhandle of Texas. And when she called them, she didn't get them on their home phone. They don't have an answering machine. They are not into any technology whatsoever. I think my aunt still has her cell phone from about 1998, even though she worked for AT&T for 35 plus years. And so my wife tried her on her cell phone, and she got her. And when she got her, she said, well, David's in the hospital and that. And in about the middle of it, as my aunt started to respond, her words were kind of slurry and kind of sounded as if she may have been drinking. And my aunt's been known to put back a beer or two in her life. And then the phone cut off. And Crystal kind of hung up thinking, wow, she's drunk and she's kind of rude, and hung the phone up. And so about a week and a half went by until I was able to call him back myself. And as soon as I got her on the phone, and Crystal came away from that with a perception of, wow, man, that's kind of weird. Their nephew's in the hospital with a heart attack, and she didn't really care and hung up. Easy to do. When I called back my aunt and asked her about it, she says, oh, tell Crystal I'm so sorry. But I was down at my sister's house, and they live in Kroll, Texas, which is even smaller than where my aunt and uncle are from. And they only have one cell tower for the cellular system, and it's miles away, and the little town sits down in kind of a hole. So the cell phone, the signal is very poor there when you're there any time. And what was going on with my aunt is she was crying while she was talking to Crystal on the phone because her sister, whose house she was at, son, at 53 years old, had just died. But because the signal was bad, and they sat down in a hole, old cell phone, how many times have we developed a perception like that and thought it was right? If I never asked about it, Crystal would have thought, wow, they were drunk and didn't care. If I'd never asked Frank about what it meant to be gay, I'd never had the knowledge. If I'd never stepped out of my own little meanness into my spiritual perception of seeing things differently, we would stay stuck. So why have we been spending this much time on spiritual perception in general? What is it in your life right now today? And maybe you've been facing this last week, this last month, this last 6 months, this last 30 years. That if you could just step outside of it and take a different look at it, it might free you up to move forward in something. How about a relationship that you felt stuck in for a while? Are you seeing it the only way that it can be seen? Are you only concerned that it's a bitter experience for you? Or can you look at what can you possibly do to make it a sweeter experience? How are you seeing your body? As a spiritual being? Or is it bitter as you look at it? Where are we with our bodies? Where are we with our minds and our hearts? Where are we with God? What is our perception of God? Is God sweet or bitter? Where are we with religion? And as bluntly as I can, where are we with the Center for Inspired Living? Is the center for you a sweet place or is it bitter? Or is it a combination of, or you're not sure? What is your perception of me? What is my perception of you? What is our perception of our community? We're a church in a box. It's hard to be stable. We're shifting constantly. Trying to minister out of my house with a family going on full time. Sweet or bitter? What do we do with this thing? How do we make it as sweet as possible for many? My eyes can count. I see numbers. I see magnificence in these seats.